You saw all sides of Elon Musk. Now, today, the public is seeing, not just visionary Musk, but crying to the New York Times Musk, tweet happy Musk, cutting off analysts on an earnings call Musk, Ambien Musk. Is this new?
In some ways it's new, in some ways it's not. If you go back in Elon's history and Tesla's history, in 2008 was really a crisis that was sort of like we're at with Tesla now, where the future of the company was uncertain. It was going towards bankruptcy, and Elon was under arguably as much pressure as he was now. And back then he would do similar things. He would give his employees a really hard time. He went after the press that was really bagging on Tesla, but I think he was not as famous back then. The companies were not as successful, and so there was not as much attention on all of this. This time around, you've got Elon on Twitter, and so this is the first time the public has seen all sides of Elon that only his employees and his family used to see before. You've got Tesla being this huge success now, so there's a lot more pressure on him, and so I think it's kind of this public crucible that's very strange to witness.
There's also this level of untruthfulness that he seems to be walking right into, not only tweeting something that could have been untruthful, that funding was secured when in fact it appears that it was not, saying that he dashed in and out of his brother's wedding when his own tweets show that he didn't do just that. I mean, how concerning is that?
It's pretty strange. So, in my experience with Elon, I think he's always been a fundamentally truthful guy. Although there have been those moments where he definitely chooses words carefully, and you could interpret them different ways. This time is definitely different. I mean, he's getting caught in sort of making things up. There was another interview on CBS where he talked about, I would never go on vacation while my workers are suffering like this, but on Instagram he had these posts where he took his kids to Petra and Jordan and Israel, and so it's another sort of strange thing where it's hard to match up.
Well, and look, I'm glad he's taking his kids on vacation. He should be able to take a vacation. He should be able to sleep.
Absolutely. You don't want to criticize this guy. Definitely works harder than just about anyone, and people are entitled to vacations. It's like, why is he? All of this stuff is sort of shooting himself in the foot. It's like, why would you say this to the New York Times when you know it's relatively easy to stitch things together? And so this is kind of the difference, I think. He's been under this pressure before, but this time around it seems to either be too much or there's just too much going on in his life, and it seems to be kind of like overwhelming him on some level.
Now, at the same time that he was supposedly doing this quick dash in and out and actually wasn't on the factory floor, Tesla, I have a chart in my GTV library, hit that 5,000 Model 3s a week milestone. And so there's this question, how much does Tesla really need him to be there 24 plus hours a day?
Yeah, it's funny for me, having done the book on him and spent all this time with these employees. It's very hard for me to separate Tesla from Elon and to sort of imagine these two companies apart. It's also hard to imagine them keeping up this pace and hitting these milestones without him being this figure. Even though he's away for 5 days, the aura of Elon continues to go through the company. I'm sure he was checking his emails and letting people have it, even from far away. And so I don't know if he has to. I think he takes a lot on where he feels this personal responsibility to make this company succeed, and it's this cross he has to bear. I don't know if he has to be there quite as much as he thinks he does, but I also don't think the company would push itself as hard without him.
Now, he talked about trying to hire a number 2, including Sheryl Sandberg, and you and I actually talked about this a couple of years ago. He looked a few times for a number 2. He's never been able to find one. Does he really want a number 2, and why hasn't that happened?
I don't think so. This has been going on for a long time, even before Sheryl and people like Tony Bates, who was the CEO of Skype. I know he had a meeting with Elon, but way before that, Tony Fadell was brought in at one point to possibly be what he thought was the CEO of Tesla, and Elon envisioned as much more like a COO type role, and so you had this disconnect on who's doing what, and so that fell through. But that was 6, 7, 8 years ago, and so this has been going on forever. So you get the feeling that Elon is setting the bar incredibly high and has some sort of hang up about being able to turn over this control, which is funny too, because if you look at Gwynne Shotwell, who's the president of SpaceX, she's been doing that for many years, and it's worked great. SpaceX, which should be the harder company, is the more consistent, reliable company of the two.
Which also potentially goes to show the value of a number two if he was able to find one. I mean, at the end of the New York Times interview, he's talked about, well, if you can find another COO who can do the job better than me, they can have the job. He doesn't mean that, does he?
I don't think he really means it. I think he probably does mean it, but he would never believe somebody could do it as good or better than him. And so it's the same thing. You know, he's gone through a lot of PR people in the past, and you know, he's brought in the top people from all over the industry, people who had worked in the car industry, people who had done other sort of high-flying jobs, and then ultimately Elon ends up doing the PR himself, and he has this thing where he wants to take it all on.
Let's talk a little bit about his relationship with the board, because there are a number of directors on this board who are also on SpaceX's board or also investors in SpaceX, people who he has personal friendships with. Does this board actually have any control over Elon Musk, and will they call him on his mistakes, of which in the past couple of weeks it seems there have been a few, or, you know, does he just get to run free here?
You know, I think he probably gets to run a lot more free than most CEOs, but it's only recently that the board has taken on some people that you would consider more independent. Certainly, the people that were there were the ones who, the biggest chunk of the board are people that have been with Elon since Tesla was gonna go bankrupt, was gonna get blown off the face of the earth, and so I think they put a lot more faith in him than probably a lot of board members would, because they've seen that this company would not exist without Elon, and so I think they give him an extraordinary amount of leeway. I think at this point, you've got to say, get off Twitter, just stay out of the press for a while, stop doing these self-inflicted wounds. You know, you've got so much on your plate, just like let this other stuff go.
Now, a huge part of your reporting was driven by current and former Tesla employees. What do you imagine they think of all of this controversy, along with the idea that their company could be going private, or at least he wants it to, which means they would lose their liquidity?
I think the feeling that I get from a lot of former Tesla employees is a feeling of shock. They've certainly seen hard-charging Elon, you know, difficult Elon, flamboyant Elon, all of that stuff before, but I think they feel there's a different tenor to what's going on now, and you know, it would be, I think for them and in the bigger picture overall, you know, it would be, he's put himself in a real difficult situation now after saying he was going to take the company private and setting all these wheels in motion. And if this doesn't work out, if Tesla can't hit these manufacturing targets, I mean, you know, the company is in a fair amount of peril, and it would be sad to see it sort of crumble at this point.
Right. So if it doesn't work out, which most people have told us they think there's zero chance, what then happens to Elon Musk? Is he still the right person to run this company?
I'm sure there's a lot of people who would argue no. I mean, to me, it's just hard. I think the company could definitely benefit with somebody who, the biggest problem Tesla has always faced is this manufacturing problem. Mm-hmm. And if you look at something like Apple, you had someone like Tim Cook. Steve Jobs was the visionary. Tim Cook was this boring supply chain guy who made sure all the factories were humming along. Apple was doing good deals. Tesla clearly needs someone of that caliber to come in and fix the machinery of the company, and Elon could still do his Elon thing. It's impossible for me to imagine Tesla without him, and for it to have anywhere near the same value or cachet or brand